Every once in a while, you've got to stop, take a breath, and say out loud the thing everyone else is thinking, but nobody wants to say. That's what this episode is about. This one isn't aimed at Washington or Hollywood or the left. It's aimed at us, at our own backyard, at the people with microphones, cameras, and platforms who claim to speak for the movement I love and the one I'm trying to build for my kids. Because somewhere along the way, conservative media stopped being about ideas and started being about attention. We stopped chasing truth and started chasing traffic. And if we don't talk about that honestly, we're going to lose more than followers. We're going to lose our integrity. So today, I'm not doing a guest interview. I'm not doing a quick reaction show. This is a full conversation, one long, honest monologue about what's gone wrong inside our own ranks and how we fix it. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. And I promise you, it's coming from a place of love. Love for this country, love for truth, and love for the people who still believe those things matter. All right, take a deep breath, pour a beer, and let's talk about it. This is We the People.
Hey, we the people like Gates Garcia, so that's no excuse.
You ever have one of those weeks where you look around, scroll for 5 minutes, and think, this can't possibly be where we are right now? Yeah, I had one of those weeks. And let me say this up front, so there's no confusion. Today, I'm coming after our own. I'm not swinging at the left. They're predictable. They're supposed to do what they do. I'm coming after the people wearing our jersey, the conservative podcasters, the commentators, the influencers, and the self-anointed truth tellers who have forgotten what truth even means. Because I'm done pretending that what they're doing is leadership. It's not. It's theater. It's a performance with patriotism as the costume. When I first stepped into this space after years in business, I thought conservative media was a modern version of the old talk radio tradition. Reagan's commentaries, Buckley's debates, Rush at his prime, people who sharpened your mind even if you disagreed with them. Now it's ring lights, studio merch, and drama packaged with professional wrestling. Everybody's cutting promos. Everybody's got a villain. The loudest voice wins. It's become Real Housewives of the right. Every episode needs a feud. Every feud needs betrayal. And the audience, we're not citizens anymore. We're consumers of conflict. We've moved from wanting to be informed to wanting to be entertained. We don't tune in to learn. We tune in to feel. We want the rush, the outrage, the takedown clip we can post. Truth used to be the headline. Now it's the backdrop. What matters is the click-through rate. And the algorithms know it. They don't want you thoughtful. They want you furious. Anger keeps you scrolling. The people at the top of the conservative media movement have figured that out, and they're milking it like an industry. Outrage is the new oil. Cheap to extract, toxic to spill, impossible to clean up. You can almost trace the timeline. In the early days, talk radio gave a voice to people who felt ignored. That was noble. Then cable news turned it into a 24-hour combat. Social media came along and said, what if we could monetize every argument? And now the outrage economy is the whole economy. The formula is simple. Pick a target, preferably someone on your own side, accuse them of being fake, weak, or controlled opposition. Post the clip, sell the shirts, cash the checks. It's not about persuading anymore. It's about performing. The ideas don't even matter. Only the emotions do. And the worst part, it works. Anger is addictive. Certainty is comforting. People crave that hit of, I'm right and they're wrong. So the influencers feed it to them on demand. The founders called for an informed citizenry. We've built an inflamed one. Scroll your feed and tell me I'm wrong. Half of these shows look like trailers for a Netflix conspiracy docuseries. The lighting, the music, the serious stare into the camera. They even title episodes like movie sequels. The Betrayal of the Movement, Part 2. They're not podcasts anymore. They're episodes of an ongoing drama where every week the villains change, but the storyline never does. Someone sold out. Someone's lying. Only we see the truth. And millions watch it because it's entertaining. It scratches that itch for clarity in a confusing world. But entertainment without education creates cynicism. It teaches people to distrust everything except the entertainer. That's the downstream effect nobody talks about. When truth becomes boring, lies become entertaining, and eventually the lies feel safer because at least it's exciting. We're teaching people to prefer adrenaline to accuracy. It used to be that conservatives were known for discernment. We were the ones who said, slow down, think it through. Now our side spreads conspiracy threads faster than BuzzFeed quizzes in 2014. Because discernment doesn't trend, nuance doesn't go viral, humility doesn't monetize. So what do the big voices do? They manufacture drama. They know a calm, reasoned discussion will get 1/10 of the clicks of a good feud, and the algorithm rewards the feud. It always does. The result? The very people who claim to be fighting the system have become its favorite employees. They feed the same machine, they say the same hate. They'll tell you they're anti-establishment, but they check their analytics like stock traders. They'll say, I don't care about fame, right before posting another selfie with their studio logo in the background. They care about ratings because ratings are revenue, and revenue means relevance. Here's what makes it unforgivable. It'd be one thing if they actually believed their own words. If they were wrong but sincere, at least you could expect that or respect that. But they don't believe it. You can tell. The tone gives it away. It's all theater. They don't lose sleep over truth. They lose sleep over engagement graphs. They stop caring whether what they're saying is true. They just care whether it's trending. And that, my friends, is criminal. Because they're doing it to people who trust them. Hard-working Americans, moms, dads, students, people who just want to understand what's happening to their country. They tune in believing they're hearing truth the mainstream won't touch. What they get is gossip in camouflage. They're not being informed. They're being entertained under false pretenses. They're paying with their attention, and their trust is the currency being stolen. If you lie to your audience, you're not a commentator. You're a con artist. We used to have a clear line between the newsroom and the stage. You could tell when someone was reporting and when someone was performing. Now that line is gone. Everybody's a hybrid. Part preacher, part salesman, part celebrity. And audiences, our audiences, have adopted it. We reward it. We don't click on the headline that says policy analysis, boring but important. We click on, you won't believe what they just did. So the market responds. The podcasters give us what we want. Constant dopamine, constant drama. It's the same formula Hollywood's used for 100 years. The difference is, at least Hollywood admits it's fiction. We've turned politics into content and content into currency, and we're shocked that truth can't compete. If the loudest voices on the right are modeling cynicism, sarcasm, and constant combat, what do you think the kids are learning? They're learning that leadership means rage, that conviction means cruelty, that influence matters more than integrity. And if we don't course correct soon, we're going to hand Gen Z a movement that's intellectually hollow and emotionally toxic. That's not what I want for my kids. That's not why I started this show. I started this to build something worth handing down. Because I still believe truth matters, even when it's quiet. I still believe curiosity is a virtue, not a weakness. And I still believe that God honors builders more than critics. Building is hard because it forces you to slow down. It forces you to care about the long term. And long-term thinking doesn't get applause in a world that refreshes every 5 seconds. That's why the destroyers always look like they're winning. They move fast. They break things. They light fires. But builders have to dig foundations first. Foundations are quiet. Foundations aren't sexy. Nobody posts a selfie while pouring concrete. You ever notice that people actually doing the good work almost never trend? The parent who starts a classical education co-op in their garage, the young pastor who mentors 5 teenage boys instead of ranting online, the small town reporter still chasing facts when nobody's watching. Those people are the backbone of this country, but they don't make the highlight reel because they're not entertaining. They're effective. Meanwhile, the loudest voices online aren't building. They are tearing down. We reward destruction because destruction feels dramatic. Building feels ordinary. But ordinary is what saves civilizations. Think back to when Reagan spoke on the radio before he was president. He didn't shout, he reasoned. He painted pictures with words. He believed the American people could handle complexity. Now we treat complexity like an insult. If a point takes longer than 30 seconds, the audience scrolls. So instead of elevating people, media personalities lower the conversation to keep them hooked. That's how we've cheapened ourselves. We tell voters they're not too smart for mainstream media, then feed them something dumber. It's tragic because we're capable of more. We can handle nuance. We can handle tension. We can even handle disagreement if we remember that disagreement doesn't make someone evil. But nuance doesn't trend, and tension doesn't monetize. So instead of inviting people into thought, these hosts bait them into outrage. And that outrage pays. It pays in cash, it pays in clout, it pays in ego. Let me peel back the curtain. Here's the cycle. Pick a headline guaranteed to make your audience angry. Frame yourself as the lone truth teller fighting the establishment. Sell the merch that says you're independent. And repeat. It's the same structure as a reality show. Keep conflict alive, keeps fans emotionally invested, make sure nobody ever feels closure, because closure kills engagement. So the machine keeps feeding your fear, your suspicion, and your division, disguised as courage and conviction. They tell you we're in a war for truth, but the only war they're fighting for is your watch time. That's why every story is breaking. That's why every headline ends in exclamation points. If they can keep you anxious, they can keep you loyal. And anxiety is great for business. But here's the human cost of all that. People don't just consume media, they absorb it. You spend enough hours listening to angry voices and you start to sound like them. You'll start to think everyone's lying to you, that nothing's worth trusting, and that the world is rigged and hopeless. That mindset kills gratitude. It kills civic friendship. It kills joy. And once joy dies, apathy moves in. That's the final stage of outrage addiction, apathy. You get so overwhelmed by fake crisis after fake crisis that when something real happens, you've got nothing left to give. That's what this culture of constant conflict is doing to us. We're burning out the moral immune system of the country. We're producing citizens who are exhausted before they ever even engage. One of the favorite lines of these podcasters is, I just tell it like it is. No, you tell it how it sells. Just telling it like it is has become a permission slip for cruelty. They think rudeness equals realism. But truth without love isn't truth. It's a weapon. And when you swing truth like a club instead of speaking it like a lamp, you stop illuminating and start injuring. Jesus didn't say, blessed are the loud. He said, blessed are the peacemakers. And that's not weakness. That's discipline. Anyone can bark insults into a microphone. It takes restraint to stand firm without venom. We need more restrained men and women. We need fewer hot takes over the state of culture. Honor used to matter in politics, in journalism, in conversation. You could disagree fiercely and then still share a handshake. There was a baseline respect that came from loving the same flag. Now half our influencers treat honor like a punchline. They roll their eyes at decency because decency doesn't generate clips. They confuse mockery with strength. They think sarcasm proves superiority. But sarcasm is the language of people who've run out of evidence. Real leaders don't rely on cheap humor. They rely on truth spoken with calm conviction. And I'll tell you something. Calm scares the enemy more than chaos ever will. Because calm means confidence. Calm means clarity. Calm means you're rooted in something deeper than views. Every time these personalities chase clicks, they're not just exploiting adults. They're shaping kids. They're teaching a whole generation that leadership is about being based instead of being balanced. That the point of politics is to own people, not to love them. That's a lie. And it's robbing young men in particular of purpose. Because young men are naturally drawn to battle. They want to fight for something. But if all we show them is chaos, they'll fight each other instead of evil outside. That's why the Groyper movement found traction. It's a counterfeit sense of mission for kids who never saw the real thing. They're looking for belonging. These podcasters give them bitterness instead. They're not shepherding lost boys. They're weaponizing them. And if you think that's harsh, look at the fruit. Racism, misogyny, nihilism, disguised as courage. It's not saving Western civilization. It's poisoning it from the inside. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if one of these viral hosts suddenly lost their entire following and had it stripped away. No likes, no comments, no sponsors, just them and a camera. Would they still speak? Would they still have something to say? Because if your courage disappears when the cameras do, it never was courage. It was a performance. Faithful people don't need applause to stay faithful. They keep going because they're anchored in something eternal. The men and women who actually changed history, Washington, Lincoln, Reagan, Mother Teresa, none of them went viral. They went the distance. They understood that character outlasts clout. That's what we've got to recover. Because as Scripture says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? In our case, what does it profit a movement to gain all the followers and lose its credibility? So what does building look like in practical terms? Building means staying married when the culture says bail. Building means showing up at the school board meetings instead of just ranting about them. Building means mentoring a kid instead of mocking a generation. It's daily, unglamorous, consistent effort. That's why the destroyers mock it. They don't have the stamina for steady work. You want to change America? Coach Little League. Teach Sunday school. Start a business that pays people well and tells them the truth. Those things don't trend, but they transform. The enemy doesn't fear our memes. He fears our marriages because strong families create strong communities and strong communities create strong nations. That's the conservative way. Not chaos, not clout. Covenant. We also need to relearn curiosity. The conservative mind once prized curiosity. It was the mark of humility. Now curiosity gets labeled weakness. If you ask a question online, someone will accuse you of not getting it. We've replaced teach me with prove it. But curiosity is the soil where wisdom grows. Without it, we're just parroting talking points. I'm 40. I remember a world before social media. I remember talking to people instead of typing at them. I remember disagreement that ended with respect. We're raising kids who will never know that world unless we rebuild it. We can still do it, but we've got to model it first. Curiosity, humility, grace. Those three words used to describe our side of the aisle. We were the people who asked questions, who studied history, who believed ideas had consequences. Now too many of our so-called leaders act allergic to all three. They don't ask questions, they issue verdicts. They don't show humility, they perform outrage. And grace got edited out of the script because it doesn't get clicks. And while we're busy fighting each other, the left is laughing. They don't have to write satire anymore. Our headlines write themselves. Every time a conservative influencer declares war on a fellow conservative, a progressive editor somewhere grins and says, "Don't change a thing," because the more divided we are, the easier their job becomes. They don't need to censor us. They just need to amplify our worst moments. They screenshot our tantrums, clip our rants, and parade them as proof that the right is unhinged. And the sad part, they're not really wrong. It's humiliating. We built this movement on principles like faith, family, and freedom, and now it looks like a dysfunctional family reunion where everyone brought microphones instead of food. There was a time when conservative courage meant standing up for what's right even when it costs you. Now it just means being meaner than the other guy. We've mistaken cruelty for courage. We've confused volume for virtue. The modern influencer will say anything, twist anything, mock anyone if it buys a few more followers. That's not courage. That's cowardice hiding behind a camera. Real courage is raising kids who know right from wrong. Real courage is showing up for your spouse when the world's falling apart. Real courage is telling the truth even when it doesn't trend. And we need that kind of courage again because what's happening online is hollow. It's a circus of self-promotion masquerading as conviction. Let's talk about platforms. A platform is supposed to be a place to stand so you can lift others higher. But these folks use theirs as a stage to make themselves taller. They forget that a platform isn't a trophy, it's a tool. And tools can build or they can break. Every post, every soundbite, every hot take is either adding bricks or throwing grenades. There's no neutral ground. When I say that, people ask, Gates, aren't you just being dramatic? No, I'm being honest. Because culture is downstream of media and media is downstream of motive. If the motive is selfish, the culture will rot. Look around. We've created a marketplace where integrity is optional and outrage is on sale, and it's killing us from the inside. Remember when truth mattered more than personality? When you could respect someone's argument even if you didn't like their accent? When people tuned in to be informed, not inflamed, that world existed. I lived in it. You probably did too. And we can get back to it, but only if we start rewarding truth again. Because right now, we're rewarding performance. And what you reward, you reproduce. If we reward cynics, we'll get more cynics. If we reward builders, we'll get more builders. It's not complicated. It's moral economics. Here's what keeps me up some nights. We might win elections and still lose the culture because we've lost credibility. People don't believe us when we talk about virtue if all they see is vice. They don't believe our talk about unity when we're too busy auditioning for the next viral feud. And when trust dies, truth dies right behind it. Because truth depends on trust. If they can't trust the messenger, they'll never believe the message. That's why this matters. It's not just about podcasts. It's about the future of persuasion itself. If we can't model honesty and humility inside our own house, why should anyone outside of it listen to us? So how do we fix it? The fix isn't glamorous, but it's real. Turn down the volume. You don't have to comment on everything. Silence can be strength. Verify before you amplify. If you wouldn't stake your name on it, don't share it. Praise builders publicly. Highlight the teachers, pastors, and parents who are doing the work quietly. Refuse to feed the drama. Conflict dies when the audience walks away. And if you've got a platform, large or small, ask yourself daily, am I building people up or tearing them down? If you can't answer building, it's time to repent, not rebrand. You know, before all of this, before this show, I ran an investment company. Business taught me something politics never could. Short-term profits can ruin long-term growth. You can pad the numbers for a quarter and still bankrupt the future. That's what's happening to the conservative media movement right now. We're chasing quarterly clicks at the expense of generational credibility. In a business, we call that fraud. In media, they call it strategy. But both destroy trust. And once trust is gone, rebuilding it takes years of sweat and humility. I'd rather be a small, honest voice than a big, hollow one, because size without integrity is a liability. At the root of all this is a spiritual issue. We don't just have a communications crisis, we have a character crisis. Scripture says wisdom is proved right by her children. So look at the fruit of our media culture. Is it peace, patience, kindness, self-control? Or is it envy, division, arrogance, and greed? If the fruit is rotten, the tree is too. We've got to repent of the idolatry of fame. Fame promises validation but delivers vanity. You can't fill a soul with applause. And I get it. The temptation's real. Every like feels like love. But it's not love, it's noise. Love tells the truth even when it costs you followers. Love builds. Love corrects. Love endures. That's what this movement needs. Less branding, more brotherhood. Let me talk directly to Gen Z for a minute. I know you're skeptical. You've watched every adult generation break promises. You see hypocrisy everywhere, especially in politics. I get it. You've been told that all institutions are corrupt, that everyone's lying, that the system is rigged. And sometimes it is. But not everyone's lying. Not everything's broken. There are still honest people. There are still noble causes. There is still truth worth defending, even when it's not entertaining. Don't let cynics steal your hope. Don't let algorithms tell you what to believe. Truth doesn't need filters or sponsors. It needs seekers. Be a seeker. Ask hard questions. But also, when you find good answers, have the humility to stand by them. Because skepticism without conviction turns into nihilism, and nihilism builds nothing. You were born for more than Stark. You were born to build. Now to my peers, the conservative podcasters, the media voices, the people with reach. I'm not your enemy. I'm your mirror. I want you to win, but you can't win like this. You can't claim to fight lies by living them. You can't claim to defend truth while prostituting it for traffic. Grow up. You've been given the gift of influence. That's sacred. Use it to lift people, not to weaponize them. If you are truly for the people, then stop poisoning the people for profit. You have a microphone. Speak with humility. You have an audience. Treat them with honesty. You have a chance. Don't waste it on drama. The world doesn't need more showmen. It needs more shepherds. Lead them to wisdom, not welfare. Because when this digital season fades, when algorithms change and fame evaporates, the only question that will matter is, did you build anything that lasted? If we turn this around, if we rebuild trust, humility, curiosity, we could still lead another great awakening of the American spirit. Imagine a conservative media that actually informs instead of inflames. Imagine conversations that challenge ideas without humility, without humiliating people. Imagine a movement defined by grace under pressure instead of rage under lights. That's possible. It starts with every one of us refusing to play the game. Turn off the camera. Talk to your neighbors again. Teach your kids why freedom matters. Reread the Bible, the Constitution, the Federalist Papers. Go build something real, something they can't deplatform. That's how revival begins. Not with a hashtag, but with a habit. So here's my challenge this week. Before you post, comment, or share, ask yourself 3 questions. Am I seeking truth or attention? Am I building something or burning something? Would I still say this if no one were watching? If you can't answer yes to all 3, maybe it's time to be quiet. Because silence, when used wisely, can heal more than noise ever will. The left won't know what to do when we stop shouting and start building again, because builders outlast bullies every time. I got into this arena to remind myself and everyone listening that faith, family, and freedom aren't slogans. They're stewardship. Faith anchors you when the culture spins. Family humbles you when success tempts you. Freedom obligates you to use your voice with wisdom. That's what this platform will always stand for. No gossip, no manipulation, no outrage for hire. Just truth, spoken with conviction and love. Because truth still matters, even when it doesn't sell. And character still counts, even when the cameras are off. Faith, family, and freedom. And the courage to build when everyone else is burning. Let's get back to it.
Hey, we the people like Gates Garcia, so that's no excuse.